everyone, and welcome to another episode of House of Codes. I'm Chris Ochoa again with Government Relations here on federal activities in Washington, D.C. Today we're going to talk about federal legislation. We've spent the last couple episodes talking about the budget. Today we want to talk about specific pieces of legislation and how we track it here in Washington. Fortunately, there's several of us here in the D.C. office, so there's a lot of overlap to hopefully we don't miss anything as we go through our processes of tracking legislation and trying to identify which pieces of legislation or bills impact ICC directly or indirectly. So one of the ways we track it here, we're here in my office today, is I have my beautiful whiteboard here where I track some of the key pieces of legislation that we follow most closely. Now online, on our ICC webpage, if you go to our federal page, we also track, you'll see most of these pieces of legislation and others, and you can go there and find summaries of the bills. You can find the sponsors and co-sponsors of the bills. So there's a good way to find the information you need if you'd like to track pieces of federal legislation yourself. But here, this is what I do in my office. I do have a system here with the color coding. Most of the green here that you'll see are bills that ICC is sponsoring. Formally or informally with coalitions, but on many of these we've actually written letters of support to the sponsor and to their offices. You can see here, taking a closer look, for instance, the Perkins Act is a piece of legislation that was enacted many years ago, has to do with supporting career and technical training. This is obviously a big bill that impacts our high school technical training program. We follow this carefully and support it. Number of others you can see we've grouped together here a number of fire bills that we get from our good friend Rob Neal, who's right next door. He helps identify a number of bills that impact the fire service that he would like ICC to support. And you can see we have a number of those here. Portman-Shaheen is a recurring energy bill that we've been very supportive of for years, and we're hoping to see that pass one of these sessions. With the red, this is sort of my danger zone, but don't be alarmed. It's not anything that we're formally opposed to, but this is definitely watch items. These are bills that we've seen that could, depending on how they get amended, and we just want to follow as they go through the committee hearing process to see how they might change. Blackburn-Schrader was a House bill last year as part of the comprehensive energy package. There were some concerns that it limited, for instance, one aspect was limiting DOE's participation in our code development process that we saw as problematic. So we're keeping an eye on it. A couple others require, directing NIST to make development organizations making consistent sets of climate information. So we're trying to find out what does that exactly mean, how much extra work. So these are bills that we've identified, got to keep an eye on. Blue, bills that we're generally supportive of, ones that we're monitoring closely but maybe haven't formally supported, but are important. You've got the Flood Reform Act, there's a lot on flood insurance going on now, the Prepare Act, FEMA reauthorization from our friend Lou Barletta, the Stafford Act. Here's another one in green we've added at the bottom. If you'll recall, the National Mitigation Investment Act we've talked about in previous episodes, especially last year. We worked on this with the Build Strong Coalition here in DC very closely. This is trying to get Congress and incentivizing states as well to pay a little bit up front pre-disaster in order to save tons of money on the back end. So this is something, though, that we're hearing more and more, actually, instead of a piece of legislation like it was last year, could become part of the proposed infrastructure package that we're hearing a lot about. So something we're following but doesn't have an actual House or Senate bill number. We also clumped together, as you can see, this is the Alliance to Save Energy, ASE, so bills of interest that might impact our energy code. You can see, again, our friend Lou Barletta takes a key interest in FEMA bills, as do we. He has a couple others that he has sponsored that we track. And we also are seeing more and more bills that impact our Solar Rating Certification Corporation, SRCC, from solar and energy efficiency, you name it. So we wanted to give you an idea of what goes on here. We track a number of, we have a number of capabilities online where we also track. We're on the Hill quite a bit, and a number of us in the office are tracking this. As I said, so there's a lot of overlap. Again, go to the website if you want more information. You can always contact me or any of my colleagues here in the DC office directly. If there's a bill you've seen or heard of, or you just like more information, we'd be happy to answer that question. And lastly, I'd like to say that just because pieces of legislation have been introduced, like comprehensive energy bills, these two in particular, comprehensive energy hasn't been updated in 7 or 8 years. Just because it's introduced doesn't mean it's going to get through this year or even this session. And especially with so many things going on in DC, healthcare, talk about tax reform, talk about infrastructure, you name it. There's so much going on. They need to accomplish a couple of things before they really get gung-ho on passing specific pieces of legislation. But still, we'll be monitoring them closely. Always call us if you have any questions, and thanks again for watching.